All right, I think it's time to get started. Welcome everyone to Cider Business School. My name is Emily Kovac. I'm the editor of Cider Culture. Maybe we've hung out at some of our other Cider School sessions or happy hours, which we were doing back in the day of early COVID. But I'm really excited to launch this new 4-part program. We're going to be meeting this time, this place every Thursday. Each week, we're going to be speaking with leaders and professionals from across the industry, and I think it's going to be an awesome opportunity for everyone. So if you know people who might be interested, there's still time to register for the coming sessions. And we are recording this session, which will be available in a day or two if you want to review it or share it, or especially for people who can't make it this time but want the resources. So thanks again for coming. Today, I'm excited to introduce Ekos's co-founder and CEO, Josh McKinney. Josh is passionate about the startup community and the craft industry and founded Ekos in 2014 to help craft producers better manage their operations. So as you probably know, Ekos is a software management platform that is a true game changer for brewers, cider makers, winemakers. It's an amazing tool. So Josh combined his experience of software and a love of craft beverage, a perfect little marriage, to develop this business management software for all kinds of producers in the craft beverage industry. So he now serves as the company's CEO and has helped Ekos reach thousands of craft breweries, wineries, and cideries in more than 40 countries, so worldwide. And I should also note that Josh is a graduate of Appalachian State University. So that's a little bit about our session leader or teacher today. If I missed anything, Josh, please feel free to chime in. But I wanted to introduce you and welcome you. And at this point, I'm just going to mute and kind of let you take it away.
Yeah, no, thanks, Emily. I appreciate it. It's exciting to be here today, and it's exciting the things that you're putting on for the industry. It's definitely helpful, and it's something that we're happy to be a part of. So I appreciate it. So we'll kind of go through everything today. So today what we're going to talk about is operations and business management. And before we get into this, I just want to be very clear with everyone that what we're going through is not a sales pitch on Ekos. I want that to be pretty clear, because what we believe as a company in the industry is we want to help producers be the best they can be, regardless of what they're using or anything else. So we want to help in best business practices as well as with our software, but understanding that, it may not be a fit for everyone. So today we're going to go through just some general business operations kind of knowledge and some things to think about, as well as looking at some of the trends that we're seeing in the industry, especially coming through COVID and everything that's happened the last couple of months. It's kind of turned everyone's business on their heads, from y'all on this webinar, from our industry, everyone working from home and having to adapt to these new times. So we're going to go through that to show what we're seeing, what tools we're seeing people use, from e-commerce to CRM to accounting, things like that. And then once we get to the end, go through some questions. So if you have any questions as we're going through, feel free to ask those, to put them in the chat. And then once we get to the end, we'll answer those, at least to the best of my ability. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So a little bit about me. First off, I hate seeing my pictures on slides, right? You're looking at the screen and you see yourself, and it's weird. But to give a brief history on myself, co-founded Ekos with my partner, Greg, in 2014, so a little over 6 years ago now. So what we did is we started building a platform for craft producers. And my background, I've always been in software, but it was always on the customer-facing side. I can't develop worth a flip. If I did, I would not have a job right now. But started getting really big into craft beer in after college, as you can imagine, because there wasn't much craft beer in college. And as I'm doing these brewery tours, talking to these brewery owners and about how they run their business and everything, as someone in software, I'm always thinking, what are you using to run your business, and having these conversations and, talking to these brewers. It's, you got the tanks and you got the distribution and everything else. So I'm like, what are you using to run your business? And the answer 9 times out of 10 is, well, we have a couple of spreadsheets and we got some clipboards that are hanging on the tank, and we got that whiteboard, and that's really it. And I'm like, okay, what else? And it's like, no, that's pretty it. We use QuickBooks for some accounting, but for the most part, it's the whiteboards, it's the clipboards, it's the spreadsheets. And I'm like, okay, so you're telling me if I go on a tour of your facility and you're walking me through, telling me about your product and your background and everything, and if someone leans up against this whiteboard, then your plan for the week or the month is gone. And they're like, yeah, pretty much. And I just can't fathom a world like that, right? And so what I did is I went back and started researching, software at the time for craft breweries. I'm like, there's got to be something out here. Surely someone else has thought of this. And at the time, it was a bunch of large ERPs. You're looking at SAP, Dynamics, NetSuite, those kind of things, or a solution that may do like 1 or 2 things. They may focus on like the production side, but not really any of the accounting functions or the sales side. So that's where the idea kind of sprang from. So Greg, my partner, he's our CTO, and he's a developer through and through. And so what we did is we launched the first iteration of our product in April of 2014. And whenever we first launched, our thinking was, okay, we want to focus on craft breweries in the United States. Like, that's it. That would be awesome. That is a great world to live in. That's a great goal to have, is to help these brewers be more efficient and productive and help them grow their business. Well, we quickly learned that the industry was a lot bigger than we were thinking in terms of scope. We started getting into Canada, Australia, New Zealand. We're in over 45 countries now as we've grown. But then, we started getting calls from cideries. So that's kind of why we got into cider. So as we're reaching into more breweries and word of mouth is growing on, what we're building, the things that we're building, I would get a call from a cidery saying, "Hey, I want to use your software." And I'm like, "Well, we do beer. I don't know if we can help with cider." And they're like, "Well, it's a lot of the same processes in some ways. We're taking something, we're fermenting it, we're packaging it, we're selling it." And we're like, okay, so the more we learn, the more we're like, okay, there could be something here as well. There's a bunch of cideries in the United States. They're growing. They've grown since 2014, 2015. And as we got into it, we had cideries signing up. And what we quickly found was, whenever we originally developed Ekos, we developed it in a way that was very beer specific. I'm pretty sure we have some of our longtime cidery customers on this webinar. And back in the day, our steps were very much mash tun, boil kettle, whirlpool if you got it, kick it to the fermenter, the bright tank. And the cideries are like, no, that's not how it works with us. We can do a batch in any tank, right? We get the juice, we get some sugar, some yeast, and we have cider. So before, we would have to have this, like, we called it a ghost tank, right? It was, okay, just start the batch here, which is essentially your mash tun. And then after you do that, move it to the tank you actually started the batch in. Well, thankfully, over the years, we evolved and we changed the software to be able to start cider batches like you should be able to start cider batches in whatever tank you're doing it in. And then over the years, we've got better and better at the blends and the splits and all the variations that are happening with the products. But what we saw very quickly too, just like in beer, TTB reports, awful. I mean, just a pain to get the information together. So we added that functionality in over the years. And kind of what we see and where our heart is we live to help craft producers, whatever the product is, whatever is being made. And what we want to do with the industry and any other industry is really help grow the industry, help with best practices. We are not perfect by any means, but what we want to do is help in the ways that we can, so that your companies can thrive, so that you don't have to hire another person or another 2 people to do data entry on something. That it should be efficient, get in and get out, get the information you need, get your numbers that you need for your accounting, be able to get your real-time inventory update and things like that. And working in cideries the last couple of years has been great, and it's an industry that we really love working in. So anything that we can do to help, we're all for. So as we go through, I just want to kind of give a disclaimer before we get into this. Technology is not going to solve all of your operations problems. We see this with our company and with our business and how we grow, and you see this bright, shiny object of software, and oh, look at all the things it can do. But then, there's the other side of that too, and it's getting it implemented, getting it up and running, and making sure that you and the teams that you're trusting to put that information in can actually use it efficiently. So it's technology is great, but there has to be that discipline behind it, right? There has to be the best practices. There has to be using it the way it should be used. So what we're going to talk about next is essentially this concept called lean business management. So what is lean business management? So essentially that's an approach to managing an organization that supports continuous improvement, a long-term approach to work that systematically seeks to achieve small incremental changes in process in order to improve efficiency and quality. So lean business, you can say it a couple of different ways. There's a number of books on this practice. For myself, my dad worked over 45 years in manufacturing, and the Toyota Way was the book that he always had around the house, always referencing Six Sigma. Lean Startup is a good one that talks about it references software companies, but it's also good on that continuous cycle of always improving, always iterating. And that's what these practices really revolve around. It doesn't matter if you're talking about how you're making the products, how you're making your cider, the processes that you have, what's your sales process look like. It's all about being more efficient, but always having that hat on of we can always do better. So making incremental changes to continue to better the business that you're doing. And for myself and our business and the companies that we work with, it's what we really encourage is trying to think about it in that way. How your business looks today shouldn't be how it looks in a couple of weeks from now, regardless. You should always be looking at things to improve and leaning on people, leaning on tools to be able to do that. So as we kind of move through, this is a way to look at this as well, is what does the process look like? Initially it's defining. So what is your problem? What's the goal that you're trying to achieve? And you kind of get your team together internally. Now, for some of you, that may be just one or two of you. For some of you may have a team of 10, 20, 30 employees. So you can lean on each other to have your champions. And I'll touch on that in a little bit. But the next step in the process is really, measure. So what information, what data can we gather to get our kind of baseline of the way things look today? Next step is analyze that. What are we going to measure? What are we going to see? Where's our next step? How can we be better in what we're doing? And then you start improving, start making changes, whether large, small, whatever it may be, but trying to improve that process. And then once you get to a good place to where you feel good about it, keeping that change in place so that you're consistently moving forward, but then you kind of move on to the next thing that you need to improve. And that can be, again, anything from just operations, from just steps that you have in your processes, from the tools that you're using where you're gathering data. It can also be just finding efficiencies and how your team's working in the field for the sales teams, or maybe you have external partners like CPAs and accountants and things like that you're working with. How can you all be efficient so that you're not having to spend your precious time doing a lot of manual processes? So with that, and what we're going to focus on a lot today is what is our goal? So as a business, and especially in today's world, you need to make good business decisions, right? And a lot of times those good business decisions need to feed our output, whatever that may be. And in this case, we're going to talk about the financial reports. So what do we need to gather? What do we need to have on a good, consistent collection basis so that on the end, we can have good financial reports to be able to make key decisions, to be able to, in today's times, just maintain the company. We just need to keep the doors open. What does that look like? Let's cut to the bare minimum. that we can to be able to be efficient whenever growth happens. So if you're opening up a second facility, a third facility, maybe just an offsite tap room, things like that. A lot of times those decisions are going to come down to having good financial reports so that you know, as a company, are we healthy enough to be able to take the next step in our business? So with that, we'll kind of walk through this diagram. So in order to get those business decisions that you can see on the right and the information to get those, all these things, all these steps go together. So on the far left, we're looking at operations and business practices. So what does your inventory management look like? What is your batch management, seller management, sales, equipment, maintenance, and then packaging? What does all that look like? You have the teams to keep track of these things for you. It may be yourself, and it may be today, it may be a lot of notes, clipboards. It may be a lot of spreadsheets. It may be a lot of, it's up here. It's in my head. Well, did you write it down anywhere? Not really, but if you ask me the question, I can tell you the answer. So it's a lot of those things that can really, as a business starts to grow and starts to scale, that can get you into trouble, right? Because if you're the single point of failure on that information, then no one else is going to be able to make decisions either. And everyone's going to have to come back to you at the end of the day to help with those things. So all this information feeds through to, in this example, our general ledger. So in our general ledger, we should have detailed data entries of our cash, where it is in the tap room, how much we got in, how much we sent out, our AR, our inventory, our investments, our equipment, what the depreciation and things look like, as well as our accounts payable. We always want to know how much money we owe to people, and we also want to know our money coming in. Where's the money coming in? When can we expect it? If we're measuring all these things, we're going to be able to get a good view of our business, and whenever we need to make decisions by, what decisions we need to be making. And all that feeds through to our chart of accounts. So what are our revenues? What are our expenses? What are our assets? What are our liabilities? So how much money are we bringing in? On top of that, where are we bringing the money in through? Is it coming mainly through our tap room? In today's world, is it coming through e-commerce? Is it coming through pickups through our tap room? Do we have our products in some accounts that are still open in some sense? And we have some things getting picked up there, but not a lot. Depending on where you're at in the country, maybe you still have some revenue coming in from some bars and restaurants, if they are open, if they're open for outdoor seating or whatever it may be. And then on our expenses side, what are we looking at there? So we're looking at our payroll, we're looking at our taxes for the state, the federal, that fun stuff. What are we paying in terms of rent? What are we paying in terms of utilities? Those kind of things. And then what are our liabilities? What money do we owe that still needs to go out the door? And then feeding through to that is our financial reports. So do we have good balance sheets? Do we have good income statements? Do we have good cash flow statements? Do we know within a reasonable doubt how our cash is going to look at any time during the month? Now, I'm sure going through the last couple of months that you all have been poring over this information to be able to make decisions for your business. Either having to go through to try to get a PPP loan to be able to keep people on staff. I'm sure you're looking at it too for having, if any furloughs need to happen, if any layoffs need to happen. At the end of the day, none of us really want to lay off anyone, right? We want to be able to keep everyone on board. We brought them on for a reason, but we have to make good, sound business decisions on how we can just keep the doors open. And a lot of that time is spent poring over these reports in order to be able to make those decisions, right? And then and as we start to come out of this, hopefully in a good place, then we can start to look at reinvesting back into the company. So do we need to get any expansion loans? Do we need additional cash for new equipment? Do we want to expand our tap room? Do we want to completely shift our business model? And that's something that we have seen a lot of the last couple of months with our customers is some people have really embraced the change. And you'll see that as we go through the rest of the presentation on really leaning into what's going on in today's world and being creative and keeping the doors open, getting cash any way you can. What's that going to look like for you in the next phase? So after we start coming out of this, are you going to want to open up a second location? Or are you like, There's no way I'm going to open up a second location. I'm going to stick with what I have, and that's going to be it. And maybe be more efficient in that, so that you can start to increase those margins on the products that you're already selling. Now, as we're moving through this, getting to the next phase, what I want to talk through, a lot of the things that we're going to go through next are software related, right? We're going to talk about the different types of e-commerce software that we see in the industry, accounting software, CRM. All these things feed together. And I have up here at the top, keys for successful software utilization. Sadly enough, I couldn't think of a better title for the slide, but what this is essentially saying is, this is just these steps that I'm going to go over. These don't just relate to software. This relates to really any change you have in your organization that helps make you more efficient on a day-to-day basis. It can be implementing new software. It can be implementing a new piece of equipment in the cidery. So did we get a new filter? Did we get a new pump? Whatever that may be, are we using it in the way that we should be using it? And does the team know what needs to be done with that equipment, how it needs to be kept track of? What new policies and procedures do we have in place to keep people safe, especially today with having to keep track of, are people wearing masks or not? Do we have enough hand sanitizer? Are the tables 6, 7, 8 feet apart? There's all of these things. And at the end of the day, a lot of those just go back to best practices, right? They just go back to, here's the rules, and now let's follow them, and making sure that we're doing that in a good way. So the first step that I want to talk about for the first key is having a dedicated champion for anything. If it's software, if it's new processes or anything else, there needs to be an owner. Now, if you're on this call and you are the owner of your cidery, the owner of your business, at the end of the day, everyone is going to be looking at you to see how you're behaving, how you're acting, and essentially, to use a good old Southern term, if you're practicing what you're preaching, right? So essentially, the ownership starts at the top from, hey, we need to do this. And that has to be communicated over and over and over. There's an old saying, you got to say something 20 times for someone to hear it once. And that goes back to either the owner, that goes back to the manager, the team lead, whoever it is. There needs to be someone within your company owning that decision and being that dedicated champion to whatever the process may be. Now, the next one is a big one, and this is working with your teams on the why. So again, any process, procedure changes, anything like that, your team's going to want to know, why are we going through this? If you come in and say, hey, guess what? We're completely changing our entire process for how we make cider. And then you just walk out. Well, what does that even mean? Your team's going to be wondering why the change? So for anything, any change, any software implementation, anything else, it really helps to communicate the why behind your decision. Always try to over communicate in those examples. So you're communicating the benefits, but then also you're going to need alignment through the rest of your company, through the rest of the team, because in a lot of times, if the team isn't fully aligned, then there's going to be communication breakdowns. There's going to be just laziness in the process, right? So something that we see with Ekos and getting it implemented for a company is if you're lucky enough to have a couple of employees, you can have your dedicated champions in each part of the software. So let's say, hey, Joe, you are fully dedicated to putting in inventory every single time it comes through the door. If we receive it in, you need to put it in Ekos so that downstream we can brew the batches, we can mix them, we can do whatever we need to, we can package them, and ultimately we can sell them, right, to bring that revenue in. But if one step in that process isn't fulfilled, and say Joe or Sally or whoever doesn't do what they need to do, it'll break down downstream, and there's not going to be that efficiency through the process. Now, next step is really getting the technology and the strategy aligned. So as a business, having a plan as well as defining success with that plan. So what does that really look like at the end of the day? So with the technology, why are we doing this? Is it changing our business fundamentally? Is it we're moving to more online sales for either pickup? Are we in a state that actually allows shipping? Can we ship just within our state? Can we ship over borders? What technology do we need to have to be able to have that change of business? And what does success look like? It may be you want to shift your sales from being 90% through distribution and 10% through the tap room. Maybe we want to change that. We want to get 20, 30, 40% through the tap room, and that can be through pickup, through drive-throughs or anything else, as well as we just want to get more people here whenever it's safe, of course. So making sure that the technology and the strategy that you have is aligned to be able to execute on that plan. Now, the next thing is typically changing technology and behavior. Those have to happen hand in hand, right? So what happens is with any implementation, like the ones that we're going to go through and the different softwares, if you're implementing a new process, a new tool, or anything else, what tends to happen is it'll shine light on gaps in the process that you didn't even realize was there. So it could be you're assuming that something is happening all along, and then you implement a new tool, a new procedure, a new software, and as you're using it, as you're getting into the practice of that, there's going to be a gap, and it's going to be, oh, well, where's this been all along? And a lot of times we see that in just cash management at the tap room, right? If you're not keeping track of the cash on a consistent basis and writing down that information, it could just be walking away. So a lot of times these changes will bring other things to light that you got to take care of. Now, the next thing, constant communication loop. With any change, I'm sure you've all experienced this. It can't just be kind of set it down and leave it, right? You have to keep talking to people and finding out what's working, what's not working, and really leaning in and making changes as you need to, so that you're listening to your team, you're listening to the other people in the company to see what's working, what's not working, and go from there. And this next one, and then it's the last one for these keys, is you really need to lean in to changes. If it is software, if it is changing processes, like I said, it's going to be uncomfortable at times. There has to be a time to really lean into these things and just really embrace the discomfort, knowing that if you have, like we said before, what success looks like, you have the plan, and you're leaning into that, then you're going to be able to get through that. You're going to be able to embrace that change, just lean into the uncomfort, and knowing that at some point these efficiencies are going to be in place that's really going to help us as a company. So now we're going to move through and we're going to start getting into the tech side of things, especially what we've been seeing on our side. So what's the importance of technology in a business? So the first thing is efficiency. So making sure that we have repeatable processes to where we're able to manage our business, and that we're being efficient with our time instead of spending too much time on one thing or the other. The next is building a scalable process. Like I just said, if you're being efficient, if you're doing these processes that are scalable in a way that help you get from this stage to the next stage, if it's growth, if it's profitability, whatever it may be, making sure that those processes are able to be scalable from, hey, we have 5 people now, is that scalable to whenever you're a 10, 20, 30 person organization? And the next one is just information sharing. It's so important, especially in today's world, with everyone being remote, everyone being in different locations. Maybe you're actually in the cidery working day to day. Maybe it's just 1 or 2 people in and out. Information sharing is key to make sure everyone's on the same page so that you don't have to be in person. So we're going to go through some of the tools that some of our customers use as well. So before we dig into this data, I just want to let everyone know this is what we're going to be looking at. So this tech stack analysis is looking at it's looking at craft beverage companies to understand what technology they're using. The information represented here is from right at 1,500 companies in North America. So this is a mix of cideries, this is a mix of breweries located all over the country, all over North America, and of varying sizes as well. And you'll see that as we go through. So what we did is we looked at the software used for accounting, the software used for point of sale, e-commerce, inventory management, CRM, as well as instant messaging. And with that, kind of what we noticed is there really three top trends with this. So the first one that was crystal clear that we've seen in the industries that we're in is e-commerce is definitely here to stay in the long term. And you'll see how the adoption of e-commerce has changed in our industries with some of the numbers that I'll go through. The next is goodbye to manual processes. So figure out ways to be more efficient in the day-to-day so that it's not a manual process of writing down on a piece of paper, putting on a whiteboard, putting in a spreadsheet, something like that. And then kind of like I alluded to in some of the successful steps is internal communication is key, no matter how you're doing it. And then it's not just from a communication perspective, but it's also key from a record keeping perspective. That is crucial, as you'll see as we go through. So the first thing that we'll dig into, like I said, e-commerce is definitely here to stay. So if we look at some of these numbers, so this is data that was actually pulled through from this is actually from the North Carolina Brewers Guild that was shared with the Brewers Association, and then they published. So this impact on the industry that we're in is this survey asked, once tap rooms and brew pubs have reopened for on-site consumption, how likely are you to continue curbside pickup or delivery options? Now you can see as we go through, for a lot of these companies, a lot of these people, they're ready to go back now. I mean, we've all seen it. Some people are just ready to get back out into the world. They're ready to go back to the tap rooms. Some are, they're somewhat likely, and then not as much. But then, and you can see as the dates move through, what's going to happen then? Are you still likely to use curbside pickup or delivery? We can see from late June or after, a lot of people are still very likely to continue using pickup. And then you can see on the very last one, there's a lot of people that are very likely not to visit a tap room or a brew pub for the foreseeable future. And who knows when that's going to turn around. That can be whenever there's actually a vaccine. It could be just whenever additional safety practices are put in place. We don't really know when we're fully going to come out of this, but a lot of people are timid to get back into tap rooms, to locations. So that's why we believe as a company too, that e-commerce is definitely here to stay, and it's definitely going to be a big part of the business as we move forward for the next couple of months, and it will have a lasting effect after we come out of COVID as well. Because one of the great benefits about e-commerce and either pickup, delivery, shipping, anything like that, is a lot of times you get to keep those taproom margins. Those taproom margins are nice, and you get a little bit took off of there for some of these e-commerce things. But if you're not having to pay a distributor or not having to worry about paying for trucks or people to do delivery or things like that, if it's set up correctly, it can be really beneficial for the company. So on this next slide, so this is going through some of the changes that we've seen in sales channels since COVID happened. So you can see on the left, what's the sales method? Is it delivery delivered by the brewery, delivery delivered by the third party? Is it just total delivery or direct to consumer shipping? And then at the bottom, you can see distribution either through self or through a distributor. Now, before, what we can see here is before COVID happened, 2.9% of people doing delivery directly to the consumer on their own, not through a third party, 3.5% through a third party. And right here is delivery overall, 5.8%, and then direct to consumer shipping, 7.6%. Now with COVID happening and the changes that we've seen, you can see this number before and currently jumped up dramatically, a 30.5% change of companies, of breweries, of cideries changing to doing delivery direct to the consumer. That is massive. Doing delivery through a third party, There was an increase, 3.8%, but not as much as that direct. And you know, a lot of this is going to depend on the laws that you have in your state. The delivery total jumped up a change of 31.8%. And then that direct to consumer shipping increased 4.8%. And as you can see down here at the bottom, distribution, it went down, as you can imagine. I mean, there's not as many bars and restaurants open. So everyone has had to get creative on the ways that they're getting their products to people. So on this next slide for e-commerce, what we can see in these numbers is currently 56% of craft producers are using e-commerce in one way or another, and we'll see some of the different ways coming up. 32% are using e-commerce plus delivery, with 87% of that being self-delivery. So they're doing it on their own. 50% have some sort of e-commerce setup with a pickup and curbside. So that would be they're placing an order on your website or via some tool, and then people are swinging by to pick it up. But that can also be if you have like a drive-through at your location, and you've got a tent set up outside, and you got your table set up with your products. Maybe you got some swag on there to sell along with the cider. But this is a huge number. And out of all of these, 35.7% are using Square as the tool for their e-commerce. Other popular things as we go through that you'll see Toast, Shopify, Arrive, Stripe. Those are some of the variations. So on this next slide, what we can see is this is a variation of e-commerce with delivery. So for breweries in the US, 71% that we measured are not doing any type of e-commerce with the delivery component. 29% are. We can see it's a little higher in the cideries that we spoke with, 69% not doing any e-commerce, with 31% doing that e-commerce with delivery. In Canada, we see it's a lot higher. We see 48% not doing it, and then 52 are. And the international, smaller percentage, but a definite change since COVID. The next, e-commerce with pickup. So what that looks like is you can see 54% of the breweries that we spoke with, yes, they're doing the pickup, they're doing the e-commerce route, taking the payments online or in person via a tablet or something else. Cideries, even higher, 56% of the ones that we spoke with are doing e-commerce with pickup. Canada, a little lower on the pickup side, more focused on delivery. The laws are a little more lax than they are here in the States. And then this next one, I just had this in here because I think it's interesting, phone ordering. Most of the people, as you can see, not doing much phone ordering at all. International is like, what is that? Why would you even do that? Canada's doing some. The cideries that we spoke with, a very small percentage of that. And then the breweries, kind of the same thing. So the hassle of taking the order on the phone, it's just not efficient, right? So that's why we're seeing it higher in the e-commerce side of things with delivery and pickup than we are on the phone ordering side of things. Now this next slide, it's going to be kind of hard to read. As you all know and are very well aware, there's a lot of e-commerce options. There's so many e-commerce options. As you can see here, we got Square. Like I said earlier, that's the leader, 35.7%. Coming after that, Toast, 13.3%. And this is a lot of what we see of people going online, picking out the time they want to pick up, things like that, and then what the products are. And then you see this tail just kind of die off through here. So people using Shopify, other, as you can see right here, clocking in at 9% of the total e-commerce platform. This is what's included in other. There's so many options out there to be able to use. As you can tell, Square, Toast, Shopify, those are the main ones that we see in the market. Next slide, got some colors to go through. This is the breakdown. So we can see for US breweries, again, this dark right here in the middle, this is Square, 37.2%. Cideries, 39% are using Square for the e-commerce. And you can see this pink up here, this is the Vino shipper. So a lot of you are using this to sell across state lines, ship within state lines, anything like that. And then you can see, especially like in Canada, Shopify, this green here, you can see throughout these different areas is a big option as well for the e-commerce side. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is marketing on these things is very essential. So these are some examples of some of our customers and what they're doing to drive traffic to these platforms. So you can have the greatest online store setup that anyone has ever seen, whether it's for pickup, whether it's for shipping or anything else. But if you're not driving traffic there, then it's not going to matter. So that's why marketing is such a key piece of this. If you get an online store set up, if you have e-commerce incorporated into your company, you need your social marketing. If you're, I say team, but if you have a team, if you have an individual, if it's you and you're just kind of doing the social media whenever you think about it, you really need to be focused on driving that traffic to whatever your option is, wherever you want people to go through, so that they know, one, that it's an option, but then two, that they're actually completing that checkout, that they're getting online, they're doing the purchase. Some ways you can do it is just by pushing it. You can see here, including a cocktail guide, just saying to people, hey, please shop online, get some to-goes, or do some offers online, change it up a little bit so that people know, hey, if I go through this site, I use this coupon code, maybe I can get a package deal on something. But no matter what tool you have sign up, you sign up for and you're using, push people to it so they know it's an option. Stay consistent with it day in and day out. Keep pushing people to it so you're reminding them, oh yeah, I can get that online. I can swing by and pick it up, or I can get it delivered, or they'll drop it off at my door themselves. So please, please, please remember, if you're utilizing e-commerce, push people to the site that you want them to use. So next, goodbye to manual processes. So we're going to go through three things real quick. Accounting, point of sale, CRM. So what do we see people using in the market? For the accounting piece, I'm sure most of you can imagine, QuickBooks is very much the dominant player on this. For the breweries that we spoke with, 96% of them use QuickBooks in one form or another. For Canadian breweries, 85%, with Sage coming in there a little bit, Zero coming in a little bit more. And on the far right, cideries, 90% using QuickBooks, 8% using Zero, 2% using other. Next, we can see for online versus desktop usage. For US breweries, 25% are using desktop, 75% using online. Cideries, looking over here at the far right, 37% are using desktop, 63% are using online. The market leader is clearly QuickBooks Online, but Intuit is very much pushing everyone that they can. I'm sure if you're using desktop, you're on this call, you're feeling that pain of them saying, hey, switch to online. They want to get rid of that desktop program so badly, but they're not going to be able to. The adoption is just, it's there. Features aren't going to come around as often, but they're wanting people to move online. And you can see through this next slide, so we kind of break it down by the size of the company. So what we see with our breweries is less than 100 barrels a year. Most of those are using QuickBooks Online. For medium, 72%, large, 49% online, 51% desktop. We typically see this in larger companies because prior to coming to Ekos, they've tried to use like the manufacturing edition of QuickBooks Desktop or something like that. But then they realized with the splits, the blends, the merges, like all those different things, that the manufacturing edition of a QuickBooks Desktop just doesn't work that well. And that's when they plug Ekos into the equation. On the far right, 81% Canadian breweries using online, cideries, 63% using online, with 37% using desktop. Next, point of sale. I'm sure that everyone on this call has some type of story with a point of sale option. And just like we looked at earlier with e-commerce, point of sale is a lot of the same. It's a lot of different options, with Square clearly being the winner in these breakouts. So we can see in US breweries, 36% using Square. Cideries, it's a lot of the same. You got 26% using Square. This 33%, surprisingly, is Touch Bistro that is being used in a lot of cideries. And this other category, this 31%, includes any of these point of sales over here on the right. There's so many different options. You all know this. I'm sure you've been through 1, 2, 10. And at the end of the day, all it really means is you got to find that right partner that fits your business. So what makes the most sense for your operation is Are you very taproom focused? Is taproom kind of like, I don't really care about it? Or are you more focused on the e-commerce side of things? And then as we break this down just between the different sizes that we came up against, we can see all throughout Square leading the way. We can see here with large breweries in this example that there's a lot more variation in what's being used, but still really no clear winner. I mean, it's 17% for Square, 17% for Arrived, and 17% in this case for Aloha. For cideries, clearly Square, the winner, 59%. Some using Toast, a lot using Other, and a lot using Clover in this example as well. Now next for CRM. So we polled these companies to see, what are you using to keep track of the people you're selling to, your different accounts and everything. And what came back was, in the companies that we talked to, 7% are using LilyPad, 4% using Repsly. People are using just Excel sheets. Some it doesn't show up on here because it falls into the other category. They're using just Google Docs. I'm sure that you've all had a Google Doc at one point or another that has a ton of different customers on it, and you're scrolling through and you're trying to keep track of all of that. We can see Salesforce, Zoho, Karma from VIP, with 45% of the people we polled using Ekos. A lot of these were Ekos customers, so that's the reason for that. 4% falling into Other, and that's some people just using MailChimp as their CRM. And then 23% over here at the end, not using anything, not using any CRM. You're just really using the invoices that you're creating for your customers. Next, like I talked about earlier, internal communication is key. So on this, what we can see is from talking to the companies that we talked to, 50% of those companies are using Slack, Microsoft Teams, or Google Hangouts for their communication. On the right, you can see, and I'm sure a lot of you are still in this same boat too, 68% are using text messages for the main form of communication within the company. Text messages are easy, right? You just pick up your phone, you text whoever it is, you ask the question. The problem with using text messages as your main form of communication is things just get lost, right? That communication gap, but then also it's really hard to keep track of any files, documentation. Records get lost, especially now that everyone's separated out. It's hard to have all the things in your phone, all the links and everything else. So for like us personally, internally at Ekos, we use Slack. We started off on the free version, and that works great. I mean, it's free. You can put all your people on there, communicate back and forth. As you start to use it more and more, you do have to pay for it if you want to keep track of old records. But it's super easy to share files. It keeps the records of the communications back and forth on, hey, I asked you to do this. Did you do it? Well, I didn't see that. Well, we talked about it back and forth. These things are very good to have in place, especially now, just to have the records in place. If worst comes to worst and you do have to lay off someone, if you do have to furlough someone, you want to be able to have those records kept track of so that they're an easy place to get to. So with this, just want to go through the typical tech stack that we've seen with the cideries that we work with. Communication up at the top, the main ones like we just went through, text messaging and Slack. At the end of the day, that's the main tools that are being used. CRM, we see mainly Ekos and LilyPad. Delivery services is either self, you're using DoorDash, or you're using VenoShipper for in-state and out-of-state shipping. E-commerce, VenoShipper, Square. Point of sale, like we saw in the numbers, Square is the clear leader there. For accounting, QuickBooks Online, day in and day out, it's the winner. And then inventory management for the majority of the companies that we talk to, it's Ekos. So with all these things, I'm just kind of showing this overall picture of the business. At the end of the day, your business is making cider, but you're also a small business that you have to keep things going, right? You gotta be able to have the technology to back you up. You gotta have the processes. You gotta have the people. And at the end of the day, there's so many options for all of these different this different tech, for the e-commerce, for the point of sale, for the accounting. It's all about finding what is the best for you, what's best for your company, what's best for your people, and that's it's the at the end of the day, the biggest decision that you have as a company. So with that, going to just get into some questions if we have any from anyone. Happy to answer anything that anyone may have on that front. Looking for questions. Not seeing any. Okay, we're getting some in now. First one is, there a startup-friendly version of Ekos for cider on a budget? Yeah, we do have an entry-level version of our platform that it helps you get up and running, right? It's keeping track of your inventory, your finished goods inventory, your batches, selling everything else, and getting your TTV reports done as well. So we can follow up on that. Mia asked, if you have no tech in a company, where would you suggest starting? My recommendation would be taking a step back and thinking about your business and if you're the owner, if you're a team lead, a manager, whatever, what is causing you the most headaches right now? What is it that you lay in bed at night and you're like, if I could just solve this one thing, I could open up like 20% of my time and I would be happier and I could focus on something else. I think whatever your biggest headache is, that's where I would recommend starting, because some things you can, I give spreadsheets a bad rap. They're a good tool. You just can't get insights out of them, right? So you can use a spreadsheet for however long to solve that problem that you're using it for. But at some point, that scalability becomes a problem and you can't grow the business. Next, Jana asked if Ekos works well with wineries. Yep. So we work well with wineries. We do the TTB reporting, the excise taxes, everything like that. And the same processes that work well for cider work well with wine. So we're right there with you. John asked how many customers were surveyed for the CRM data. So let's see. We surveyed everyone. And yeah, it was all Ekos customers. So the responses back, there was about 500 responses on the CRM adoption. And that's how many that replied back with those answers. And existing Ekos customers, the majority of the people that we asked were Ekos customers. So that's why you can see that skew of the 45% Ekos. Well, that's why, I mean, the majority of them were our customers. Let's see, I thought I saw another question pop up, but.
I think there's one.
Chat, yep, there we go. Yep, entry-level Ekos tracks cidery and taproom inventory and sales. Nope, it's the same program. So the way it works is you have your taproom separate from your different accounts and everything else, and you just say if you sold it through the taproom or if you sold it to an outside account, if you sold it to an outside account, who that account was. So it'll keep track of the inventory that you move over to the taproom, what's consumed through there. And one of the main reasons we do that is so it spits out that information correctly on the TTV reports and helps you calculate your excise taxes.
Are there any other questions? Oh, it looks like maybe.
Matt asked real quick, the best solution to track ciders on tap in the tap room to see what levels are at the end of the day would be helpful for changing out kegs. Yep, that is a great question. So, and you know, the pours and everything else, that's difficult, right? Because you're not exactly sure what's coming through. Over the years, there have been some solutions that were released on the tech side to help measure what's going through the pores and things like that to see those actual volumes. A lot of those companies they're not around anymore, unfortunately. But in Ekos, we kind of do it, but we're not doing it at the draft level yet. We are planning on incorporating that with some of our point of sale integrations, because we know if it's a 6-stall, if it's half barrel keg, what the amount that you should get out of that, and then drawing that back to see how much loss is at the end of the day. So Matt, I'm sorry for that question. I don't have a great answer for it. There's not really a great solution to recommend. But the same problem that you see is something that we see as well. And while we're not there yet, we are working on trying to figure out a solution for it. see. Joel, if you consider designing your system, monopoly liquor retail jurisdictions and their ad terminals. You know, what's been interesting through COVID with all of the different laws and legislation, some that was in place prior to this for Jared, kind of Joel, what you're talking about is the liquor retail, like even distributors, right? So many laws are changing. And for us as a company, it's changed the way that we're even looking at our roadmap in terms of the things that we need to focus on, because the laws are changing so fast in some of these different areas. If it is, like you say, with liquor retail, or if it's with distribution, if it's cross state lines distribution, if it's within state, as these laws changing, it's super interesting to keep track of. And I honestly believe that more and more of these laws are going to continue to change in ways that are more favorable for the producers and not for the monopolies that you're talking about. Because at the end of the day, why can't you, as a liquor producer, as a cider producer, as a beer producer, sell a product, as long as you're doing it smartly, just like you can food bars or anything else? And then you said you're thinking about Canada. Yep, we do get that question for Canada. We have a lot of Canadian customers, and it's something that there's real opportunity around. And at the end of the day, it's finding out what's the best thing to work on. But I like your thinking. Haven't had any other questions come in. Emily, is there anything else that you'd like me to touch on before we kind of close out?
No, I thought that was super thorough. And, I think we can kind of give it a last call for questions from the participants. And just a reminder to everyone that you will be able to view this recording of this in the future. And yep, just a little reminder for our class next week. And in the meantime, if anyone has any questions or, needs, any clarification on things, you can always email me, emily@dish.llc.com, and I could forward it on to the Ekos team, or I'm sure you can reach out to the Ekos folks too. Is that cool?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We're here to help. It's especially now with, everything's been turned on its head for all of us. So the first thing that happened for us whenever COVID hit and we saw all of our customers having to shut down, one of their main sources of revenue, we kind of went into scramble mode too, to figure out how can we help. So we've done a lot. Y'all are a part of that, of figuring out ways to give people information and keep them open. So any way that we can help, more than happy to. And so next week, quality product, maintaining high standards, and we'll keep doing this school. So we're excited about it.
Yeah. Well, thanks everyone who registered and came to check it out. Thanks for staying till the end. We look forward to seeing you next week. And again, if you want to share this link with anyone you know, anyone on your team, please, the more the merrier. So feel free to invite anyone who you think might benefit, whether they work for your company or not. Josh, thank you so much for your time and your energy in this. We will see you all next week here at 4 o'clock Eastern again. Thanks for all the positive feedback, and have a great weekend. We'll see you guys next week.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Bye.